The thin veil between the internal sanctuary of the mind and the sprawling, concrete expanse of the physical world has long been perceived as a fixed and impenetrable barrier, a silent agreement that what we whisper in the dark of our own consciousness remains safely tucked away from the scrutiny of the sun. Yet, there is a growing, shimmering realization that this wall is not made of stone, but of a porous, breathing fabric, a translucent membrane that is beginning to fray at the edges. We find ourselves standing at a peculiar precipice in human history, an era where the quiet internal dialogue of the soul no longer remains confined to the gray matter of the cranium, but instead begins to seep, like ink into a basin of clear water, into the very texture of our lived reality. This phenomenon, this leakage of thought into the physical realm, is not merely a metaphor for psychological projection. It is a fundamental shift in the resonance of existence, a warning and a wonder that demands we watch with eyes wide open as our intangible intentions begin to crystallize into tangible forms. It is as if the universe itself has decided to stop ignoring our secrets, acting as a mirror that reflects not just our faces, but the very frequency of our hidden preoccupations. Imagine, if you will, the mind as a subterranean ocean, vast and pressurized, filled with the currents of desire, fear, and silent conviction. For eons, we have believed that the surface of this water was a hard boundary, a limit beyond which nothing could pass unless we physically reached out to touch the world. We operated under the mechanical assumption that the world was a collection of cold objects, indifferent to the heat of our passions or the weight of our despairs. However, we are now discovering that the pressure within this mental ocean has reached a critical mass, and the water is beginning to erupt in geysers of synchronicity and manifestation. When we speak of thoughts leaking into the physical world, we are describing a collapse of the traditional distance between the dreamer and the dream. The architecture of reality is proving to be far more responsive than our ancestors dared to imagine, vibrating in sympathy with the silent chords we strike within the chambers of our own hearts. This is a call to awaken to a new kind of responsibility, one where the privacy of the mind is replaced by the visibility of the soul's deepest contours. To contemplate this leakage is to acknowledge that we are no longer passive observers in a static gallery of events, but rather active weavers in a cosmic loom where every strand of thought carries a specific charge. The world around us is not a finished product. It is a continuous unfolding, a clay that is constantly being molded by the unseen hands of our focused attention. When a thought is held with enough intensity, when it is nourished by the fertile soil of emotion and repetition, it begins to exert a gravitational pull on the atoms of the external environment. It starts as a faint whisper, a mere ghost of a possibility, but soon it begins to gather density. You may notice it first in the small things, a name mentioned by a stranger that you had just been thinking of, a book falling from a shelf to answer a question you hadn't yet voiced, or a sudden change in the weather of your social circles that perfectly mirrors the internal climate of your own moods. These are not mere coincidences. They are the first trickles of the flood, the evidence that the internal and the external are two sides of the same golden coin, spinning in the light of a singular consciousness. There is a certain breathtaking terror in this revelation, a sense of vertigo that comes from realizing that our fortress of solitude has been breached. If our thoughts are leaking, then we are exposed in a way that no physical vulnerability could ever match. We are forced to confront the debris of our own negativity, the jagged shards of our insecurities, and the shadowy specters of our unhealed wounds, all of which are now finding purchase in the physical landscape. The world becomes a gallery of our own creation, and sometimes the art is haunting. Yet, within this warning lies the greatest invitation ever offered to the human spirit. If the leakage is real, then we possess the key to a laboratory of infinite potential. We are being told that the materials of reality are soft, and that by refining the quality of our internal vibrations, we can literally reshape the geometry of our lives. The watch immediately directive is not a cry of alarm for an approaching disaster, but a signal to observe the mechanics of our own influence, to witness the incredible power we hold to dictate the narrative of our existence simply by choosing where we anchor our perceptions. We must look at this leakage as a form of cosmic feedback, a sophisticated bio-referenced system designed to teach us the mastery of our own creative essence. The physical world is acting as a giant screen upon which our mental movies are projected, allowing us to see the flaws in our scripts and the brilliance of our inspirations. When we see a pattern of struggle or a recurring obstacle in our path, we are being invited to trace the thread back to its origin in the labyrinth of our thoughts. When we see sudden blossoms of grace and effortless success, we are seeing the physical echo of an internal alignment. This fluid exchange suggests that the universe is not a machine, but a mind, a vast, encompassing intellect that recognizes its own parts in the sparks of our individual awareness. We are learning to speak the language of the cosmos, a language where the word and the object are one and the same, where the thought of light is the beginning of the dawn. As we stand at this threshold, the air feels different, charged with a static electricity that suggests a storm of transformation is brewing. The old maps of cause and effect are being redrawn, and the straight lines of logic are bending into the elegant curves of intentionality. We are moving from a world of doing to a world of being, where the state of our internal garden determines the harvest we find in the marketplace. To watch your thoughts leak is to participate in the most profound experiment of all, the conscious evolution of reality. It is a journey into the heart of the mystery, where we discover that the stars are not distant points of light, but reflections of the brilliance we carry within. This introduction to the leaking thought is merely the opening of the door. What lies beyond is the realization that we are the architects of the very world we thought we were merely inhabiting. We are the dreamers who have finally realized that the dream is responsive, and that every flicker of our mind is a brushstroke on the canvas of the infinite. To understand how the abstract vapors of the mind condense into the hard surfaces of reality, we must first dismantle the illusion of the void. We have been taught that the space between our bodies and the objects we touch is empty, a silent nothingness that acts as a buffer between the self and the world. However, the core truth of this leakage reveals that there is no such thing as empty space. There is only a field of infinite potentiality, a sensitive, resonant medium that reacts to the slightest tremor of human intent. This field is the canvas upon which our thoughts are etched, and it functions through the law of sympathetic resonance. Just as a silent piano string will vibrate when a nearby instrument strikes a corresponding note, the fabric of the physical world begins to hum in harmony with the dominant frequency of our internal state. This is the first pillar of the phenomenon, the realization that thought is not a static image held in the brain, but a directional wave of energy that travels outward, seeking a physical home that matches its specific vibration. The leakage we experience is the result of a profound coherence between the internal signal and the external receiver. We often imagine that our thoughts are fleeting, ephemeral wisps that vanish as soon as a new one takes its place. But in the deeper architecture of the soul, thoughts are cumulative. They possess a subtle mass. When we focus on a specific concept, whether it be the anticipation of a crisis or the quiet confidence in a coming joy, we are effectively feeding a gravitational well. The more we revisit a mental landscape, the deeper that well becomes, until it starts to pull the circumstances of the physical world toward it. This is why the warning is so vital. Many of us are unknowingly leaking chaos into our environments because our internal worlds are fragmented and fearful. We are broadcasting a signal of lack, and the universe, being a faithful mirror, reflects that lack back to us in the form of missed opportunities, broken connections, and physical stagnation. The leakage is impartial. It does not distinguish between what we want and what we fear. It only responds to what we are consistently being. Central to this concept is the dissolution of the boundary between the observer and the observed. In the classical view of reality, we are like spectators in a theater, watching a play that would continue regardless of our presence. But the reality of thought leakage suggests a participatory universe, a grand improvisation where the audience is also the playwright and the lead actor. The themes of our lives are not imposed upon us by a distant fate. They are the outward expressions of our most deeply held beliefs about how the world works. If we believe the world is a predatory place, our thoughts leak a scent of vulnerability that the environment inevitably responds to. If we believe that we are supported by an invisible grace, that inner serenity acts as a beacon, drawing to us the people and situations that validate that grace. This is the hidden dialogue of existence, a constant, silent conversation between our subconscious mind and the atomic structure of our surroundings. The pillars of our reality are built from the bricks of our assumptions. This leads us to the theme of the ghost in the machine, the idea that there is an intelligent spark within us that is far more powerful than the analytical mind. While our surface thoughts are the ripples on the water, this deeper intention is the tide itself. Most of the leakage that occurs happens below the level of conscious awareness. It is the subterranean beliefs, those ancient scripts written in our childhood or inherited from the collective psyche, that exert the most significant influence on the physical world. To watch your thoughts leaking is to begin the process of making the unconscious conscious. It is the act of shining a light into the basement of the mind to see what kind of blueprints we have been handing to the universe. We discover that we have been building houses of glass while throwing stones of judgment, or that we have been praying for rain while closing all the windows. The themes of this leakage are patterns of alignment. When the surface mind and the deep soul speak the same language, the physical world responds with a clarity that can only be described as miraculous. Furthermore, we must consider the concept of temporal resonance, the idea that our thoughts are not just leaking into space, but into time itself. Our current physical reality is often the delayed echo of thoughts we held in the past. There is a gestation period for manifestation, a cosmic pause that allows for the density of matter to rearrange itself. This delay is a mercy. If every fleeting whim or dark impulse manifested instantly, the world would be a place of unimaginable volatility. However, this lag often leads us to believe that our thoughts have no power, causing us to become careless with our mental hygiene. We see the leak only when the basement is already flooded, forgetting the slow drip that began months or years ago. Understanding this core theme allows us to become patient gardeners of the mind, planting seeds of intention today that we know will eventually break through the soil of tomorrow. We begin to treat our internal dialogue with the same reverence we would give to a sacred ritual, knowing that every word spoken in the silence of the heart is a command issued to the future. Ultimately, the core theme is the reclamation of our divine agency. It is a transition from being a victim of circumstance to being a conscious co-creator. The leakage is not a malfunction of the universe. It is a feature of a highly sophisticated, responsive system designed to mirror our growth. It is a feedback loop that shows us exactly where we are out of alignment with our highest potential. When the physical world becomes harsh or resistant, it is a signal to soften the internal landscape. When the world feels vibrant and expansive, it is a confirmation that we are flowing with the current of our true purpose. We are learning that the physical world is not a prison of matter, but a playground of spirit, a place where the intangible becomes tangible, so that we might better understand the nature of our own light. The themes of resonance, coherence, and intentionality are the tools of the new human, the one who understands that to change the world, one must first master the whispers of the mind. To grasp the true weight of how our thoughts bleed into the fabric of existence, we must look beyond the sterile descriptions of energy and resonance and enter the realm of the symbolic, where truth often wears the mask of a story. Imagine a traveler lost within a vast, shifting labyrinth made of high emerald hedges. This traveler believes they are a victim of the maze, desperately seeking an exit while cursing the dead ends and the thorns that snag their clothing. However, as the sun rises to its zenith, the traveler notices a peculiar phenomenon. The paths of the labyrinth only form as they decide which direction to turn. When they feel a surge of fear, the hedges grow taller, and the shadows lengthen into dark, grasping fingers. When they pause to admire the beauty of a single flower, the path ahead widens and the thorns retract into soft, velvety leaves. The labyrinth is not a pre-existing prison, but a living extension of the traveler's own psyche. This is the allegory of the leaking mind. The world is the maze, and our thoughts are the hidden blueprints that the hedges follow with unwavering obedience. In another ancient narrative, we find the myth of the celestial mirror, a story told by sages who lived atop the highest peaks of the soul. They spoke of a time when the sky was not a distant void, but a polished mirror made of liquid silver that hung just above the heads of humanity. Every gesture made on earth, every secret longing, and every bitter resentment was instantly reflected in the silver sky. If a person held a grudge, they would look up and see a dark cloud forming in the mirror, which would eventually rain down stones upon their own house. If a person practiced the art of inner stillness, the mirror would reflect a radiant sun that warmed their fields and made their crops grow in abundance. Over time, the people forgot that the sky was a mirror, and they began to fear the weather as an external, capricious force. The leakage we speak of today is the modern realization that the celestial mirror never went away. It simply became invisible to the untrained eye. We are still living under that silver canopy, and our daily experience is the weather of our own making, a symbolic storm or a golden afternoon dictated by the climate of our inner dialogue. Consider also the tale of the master weaver who lived at the edge of the world. This weaver possessed a loom that stretched from the depths of the earth to the height of the moon, and they used threads of pure light to create the tapestry of reality. However, the weaver did not choose the colors or the patterns themselves. They waited for the vibrations of human thoughts to arrive on the wind. Each thought was a specific hue, a unique texture. A thought of compassion arrived as a thread of shimmering gold, while a thought of envy arrived as a coarse, muddy brown. The weaver's hands moved with the speed of thought, weaving these arrivals into the landscape of the world. If the people of a village were filled with anxiety, the weaver's hands produced a landscape of rugged cliffs and treacherous ravines. If they were filled with gratitude, the tapestry became a lush valley of fruit trees and calm waters. The leakage is the wind that carries our threads to the weaver. We are the suppliers of the raw material, and the world is the finished garment we are forced to wear. There is a deeper, more intimate story about the shadow guest who lives within every household. This guest is invisible and silent, yet they have the power to move furniture, open windows, and change the flavor of the food on the table. The shadow guest is the personification of our recurring subconscious patterns, the thoughts that leak out while we are sleeping or distracted by the mundane tasks of life. If we ignore this guest, they become mischievous, creating friction in our relationships and obstacles in our careers. But if we acknowledge them, if we treat our inner thoughts with the respect we would give a guest in our home, the shadow guest becomes a benefactor. They begin to arrange our lives in ways that seem effortless, smoothing out the wrinkles of our day-to-day existence. This narrative teaches us that the leakage is not an invasion, but a domestic reality. We are never truly alone in our private thoughts, for they are always busy in the background, setting the stage for the drama of the following day. Finally, let us look to the symbol of the alchemist's vessel. In the basement of the universe, there is a great cauldron into which all human thoughts are poured. The alchemy of life is the process of turning these base, leaden thoughts into the gold of physical manifestation. Most people throw their thoughts into the cauldron at random, creating a volatile, bubbling brew that occasionally overflows in unpredictable ways. The master alchemist, however, understands that the heat of the fire is fueled by emotion, and the ingredients are chosen with extreme care. They do not let a single drop of poison, a single thought of self-doubt or malice, fall into the vessel. They know that once a thought has leaked into the cauldron, the transmutation is inevitable. The physical world is the philosopher's stone, the crystallized result of a perfectly purified mental process. The warning, "Watch immediately," is the alchemist's reminder to check the purity of our ingredients before they become the permanent reality we must inhabit. These stories serve to remind us that the leakage is a sacred mechanism, a way for the infinite to communicate with the finite. We are being shown through symbols and shadows that we are the authors of our own epic. The labyrinth, the mirror, the tapestry, the guest, and the vessel are all different names for the same truth: that the divide between the in here and the out there is a holy fiction. When we change the story we tell ourselves in the silence of our own hearts, the physical world has no choice but to rewrite its chapters to match. We are the ink, and the world is the paper. The leakage is simply the act of writing. As we move deeper into this exploration, we begin to see that our responsibility is not to control the world, but to master the hand that holds the pen. To move from the ethereal heights of symbolic narratives into the bustling marketplace of daily life, we must learn to recognize the leakage not as a mystical anomaly, but as a practical law of gravity for the soul. The transition from insight to integration begins with the radical acceptance that our environment is a living ledger of our mental transactions. When we wake up in the morning, we are not merely entering a room, we are stepping into the physical residue of yesterday's consciousness. Practical integration starts with the aesthetic of the internal, a deliberate practice of curating our thoughts with the same scrutiny we might use to choose the furniture for our homes or the clothes for a defining interview. In the real world, this looks like the immediate cessation of idle complaining, which is perhaps the most common way we leak toxicity into our physical surroundings. Every time we vocalize a limitation or narrate a grievance, we are effectively placing an order with the universe for more of the same. By observing the leakage in real time, we can begin to catch these mental spills before they stain the carpet of our reality. The implications of this phenomenon in the realm of human relationships are particularly profound and immediate. We often believe that our thoughts about others are private, yet we have all experienced the unspoken tension in a room, or the instant warmth of a stranger. This is the leakage in its most social form. When we hold a secret judgment against a colleague or a partner, that thought emits a specific vibrational scent that the other person's subconscious detects, leading to defensive behaviors and friction that seem to have no logical cause. Conversely, by holding a silent frequency of appreciation, we can often witness a softening in the physical world. People become more helpful, doors open without effort, and conflicts dissolve before they are even voiced. Integration in this sphere means treating our private thoughts about others as if they were being whispered directly into their ears. This shift in perspective transforms the way we interact with the world, moving us away from manipulative doing and toward a state of magnetic being, where our internal integrity does the heavy lifting of social harmony. In the theater of professional ambition and financial flow, the leakage of thought acts as a silent architect of opportunity. We see this play out in the lives of those who seem naturally lucky. Upon closer inspection, their luck is often the physical manifestation of a persistent, unshakable belief in their own value and the world's abundance. They do not leak the energy of need, which is a frequency of lack, but rather the energy of contribution, which is a frequency of flow. For the practical seeker, this means identifying the scarcity leaks in their own mind, those recurring thoughts of not having enough time, enough money, or enough talent. These thoughts act as physical blockages in the real world, manifesting as technical glitches, administrative delays, or missed connections. By consciously repairing these leaks and replacing them with a narrative of sufficiency, we allow the physical world to reorganize itself. We find that the right person calls at the exact moment we need them, or a solution appears in a dream that resolves a complex engineering problem. This is not magic. It is the natural result of removing the mental resistance that prevents the world from reflecting our highest potential. Health and the physical body are perhaps the most direct canvases for the leaking thought. Our cells are the primary audience for the internal monologue we broadcast all day long. Modern science is beginning to touch upon this through the study of the placebo effect and the impact of stress on cellular aging. But the concept of thought leakage goes even deeper. It suggests that our physical vitality is the visible tip of an invisible iceberg of self-perception. If we constantly think of ourselves as fragile, tired, or declining, we are issuing biological commands that the body must eventually follow. Integration here involves a somatic mindfulness, where we treat every thought as a chemical injection into our bloodstream. We begin to use the leakage to our advantage by flooding our internal system with thoughts of resilience, repair, and vibrant energy. We don't just think these things. We feel them until they spill over into our physical posture, our gait, and our immune response. The real-world takeaway is that the body is not a machine that breaks down randomly, but a responsive organism that mirrors the story we tell about it. On a larger, more collective scale, the real-world implications of leaking thoughts suggest that our shared reality, our cities, our politics, our environmental health, is the sum total of the collective's mental climate. When a society is gripped by a singular fear, that fear eventually leaks into the physical world as policy, infrastructure, and even ecological shifts. This realization empowers the individual to see their own mental clarity as a form of environmental service. By maintaining a high-frequency internal state, we are not just helping ourselves, we are contributing a cleaner, more constructive leak into the collective reservoir. We become like filters in a polluted stream, turning the water clear just by the virtue of our own purified presence. This is the ultimate practical application, the understanding that our mental hygiene is a civic duty. We move through the world knowing that we are constantly broadcasting a signal, and we choose to make that signal one of order, beauty, and coherence. As we integrate these insights, the world stops being a place of struggle and starts being a place of dialogue. We learn to read the omens of our daily lives, not as superstitions, but as data points regarding our current mental alignment. A broken appliance might be a physical echo of internal frustration. A sudden gift might be the reflection of a newly adopted state of gratitude. We stop fighting the shadows on the wall and instead adjust the light that is casting them. This is the transition from the victim of the world to the master of the self. It is a grounded, eyes wide open approach to living where we take full accountability for the weather of our lives. We realize that the warning was never about an external threat, but about the incredible, untapped power we carry within us every moment. We are the creators who forgot our tools, and the leakage is the universe's way of handing them back to us. We have traveled through the porous borders of the mind, navigated the resonant architecture of the field, walked the symbolic paths of the labyrinth, and grounded ourselves in the practical alchemy of our daily movements. Now we arrive at the final clearing, the realization that the leakage we once feared as a vulnerability is, in truth, the ultimate homecoming of the human spirit. The warning that initiated this journey has transformed into a celebratory anthem, a revelation that we are never truly separated from the world we inhabit. If our thoughts are leaking into the physical realm, it means that the universe is not a cold, indifferent machine, but a responsive, living presence that is intimately acquainted with the whispers of our hearts. The conclusion of this exploration is not a closing of a door, but the widening of a portal, an invitation to step fully into the role of the conscious architect. We are being called to recognize that the divide between the dreamer and the dream has been a temporary illusion, a necessary stage in our evolution that allowed us to develop the precision of our will before we were granted the keys to the kingdom of manifestation. This transformational call is an invitation to radical intimacy with existence. To live with the awareness that your thoughts are leaking is to live in a state of perpetual prayer, not in the sense of begging a distant deity for favors, but in the sense of a continuous, rhythmic alignment with the source of all form. It is the realization that every moment is a holy encounter between your internal intention and the external response. When you walk down a city street, you are not just passing through space. You are moving through a dense field of your own previous echoes and future potentials. The transformation occurs when you stop trying to fix the physical world and start tending to the garden of your mind with the devotion of a master. You realize that the struggle, the resistance, and the scarcity you perceived in the world were merely the physical shadows of internal clouds. By clearing the sky of your own consciousness, you allow the sun of your true nature to illuminate the landscape, and you watch in wonder as the world rearranges itself to match the brilliance of your inner clarity. There is a profound sense of peace that comes with this mastery. The frantic doing of the old world, the desperate manipulation of people and objects to achieve a desired outcome, falls away. replaced by the elegant being of the new human. You understand that you do not need to chase your desires across the globe. You only need to embody the frequency of that which you seek until the world has no choice but to deliver it to your doorstep. This is the secret of the masters throughout the ages, that the physical world is the downstream effect of an upstream cause. By positioning yourself at the source of the stream, you govern the flow of your entire life. This call to transformation is a call to silence, to the quiet observation of the mind, and to the deliberate choice of the highest possible thought in every circumstance. It is the understanding that your greatest contribution to the world is not what you build with your hands, but the quality of the signal you broadcast from your soul. You are a lighthouse, and your only duty is to keep your lamp clean so that the light can leak out into the darkness and guide the world home. As we bridge the insights of this exploration, we see that the leakage is a form of cosmic feedback designed to lead us back to ourselves. Every challenge we face in the physical world is a gentle correction, a pointer showing us where we have forgotten our own power. Every joy and synchronicity is a confirmation, a nod from the universe that we are in harmony with the grand design. This realization dissolves the fear of the unknown, for nothing is truly unknown if it is born from the depths of our own awareness. We become the authors of our own destiny, writing with the ink of intention on the pages of space and time. The transformation is complete when we no longer see the world as something that happens to us, but as something that happens through us. We are the aperture through which the infinite experiences itself, and by refining the lens of our thoughts, we allow the infinite to manifest in its most beautiful and harmonious forms. The final message of this journey is one of immense hope and terrifying beauty. We are standing at the dawn of an era where the human mind is beginning to recognize its own reflection in the stars and the stones alike. The warning to watch immediately is a reminder that the window of opportunity is always now. Every second is a fresh beginning, a clean slate upon which a new thought can be etched, a new leak initiated. You are not bound by the patterns of the past unless you choose to keep thinking the thoughts of the past. You have the power to change the climate of your life in an instant by shifting the focus of your inner eye. This is the ultimate freedom, the realization that the prison walls were made of thought and that the key to the gate is made of the same material. You are the prisoner, the key, and the gatekeeper all at once. In this unified, contemplative state, we see that the leakage is the breath of the soul entering the lungs of the world. It is the way the invisible becomes visible, the way the word becomes flesh. As you conclude this exploration, take a moment to sit in the stillness of your own presence. Feel the weight of your thoughts as they hover on the edge of manifestation. Realize that you are a powerful, radiant being, and that the world is waiting for you to tell it who you are. Do not be afraid of the leakage. Embrace it. Master the whispers of your mind, and you will master the structure of your reality. The universe is not listening to what you say. It is responding to what you are. Be the light, be the peace, be the abundance you wish to see, and watch as the physical world transforms into a paradise that mirrors the heaven you have cultivated within. This is your birthright, your responsibility, and your greatest adventure. The veil is gone, the mirror is clear, and the world is ready to reflect the magnificent truth of your conscious being.